In life, we all face challenges. Overcoming them is part of it. During one of my recent streams, we talked about how Souls games represent this. Life is hard, it throws seemingly impossible challenges at you, but when you finally overcome them, the feeling of accomplishment and achievement is matched by no other. Games that present overwhelming challenges are the most rewarding and can make us feel confident enough to try overcoming our real-world struggles. My biggest real-world challenge is that I suffer from a severe mental illness. I've spent my life living in a world that was not built to accommodate me and others like me. This has made life tough. Some might say it is playing on hard mode, and unfortunately, there is no difficulty slider in life. For better or for worse, you are stuck with whatever hand you were dealt, unless you get a lucky break or some kind of opportunity that can lead you out of it. My point is that life is hard. It is engineered to bring suffering, and there isn't a single human being who can escape the fact that existence is pain. If you watch any of the commentary videos on my channel, you'll notice a theme in that I talk a great deal about the importance of art. Art exists in a never-ending cycle. Pain creates art, art alleviates pain, pain will inevitably happen again to an artist, and they will create art from the experience. The cycle continues. I could speak at length about how Nier Automata taught me the meaning of life, how Death Stranding taught me that suffering alone isn't synonymous with strength, or how Spirit Circle taught me to forgive myself. But not today. Today is dedicated to a game I found within the last year, one I've poured almost 1,000 hours into, a game that quietly taught me to appreciate the things I have. Most people probably look at Project Zomboid and think, oh, a crafting survival game, cool. And to be fair, it is a fantastic survival game, one of the best in the genre in my opinion, and no one would be wrong in describing the game as such. But under the hood of this beast lies so much more. The enemies in the game represent a looming threat. The threat might be slow, but it is persistent, and it takes no breaks. Your enemy does not need sleep, it only has a hunger for your flesh. It isn't in need of rest or conversation, it can come fast or slow, it lurks until you let your guard down. Your enemy is death. Death will always skulk about in the shadows, and there is no escaping it when it strikes. Project Zomboid doesn't have a win condition because you cannot beat death. The game starts out by immediately telling you there is no hope. You will die. As I already stated, I have schizoaffective disorder, a mental illness that impacts all aspects of my life. It has intruded upon my ability to make friends and have lasting relationships. It has at times made me a negative and angry person, and at other times it has made me depressing to be around, suicidal, melancholic, and incapable of feeling pleasure. There have been times in my life where I wished for death, times where I've tried to induce finality early, times I've lost all hope. And during the worst storms I've faced, one force has consistently shined a light in the darkness, and that is art in its many forms. As a 12-year-old kid, seeing what Shinji and the others were going through made me feel less alone. It made me realize there was hope because someone else who went through this shit survived it and wrote a beautiful piece of art to show for it. And if you know anything about Hideaki Anno, I'm sorry, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, then you know I was correct in my assumption that the creator of Neon Genesis Evangelion suffered greatly. As a kid, hearing Shinji finally say, "It's okay for me to be here," gave me hope. It told me that one day I could feel that way too. My journey would be long and arduous, but like Shinji, I would eventually have to face these things head on. About a decade ago, I played a lot of Skyrim, and I remember hunting dragons and burning cities down in the game very specifically to blow off steam. I have anger issues and often utilize coping mechanisms to keep it under control. Although that strategy might sound good, it really isn't. The problem is I wasn't dealing with whatever upset me. Instead of talking about it or self-reflecting, I was playing a game and mindlessly killing things in it in order to redirect my anger. But this was only a temporary fix. Whatever got me angry needed to be addressed, but instead I try to set any validity my anger had aside. I tell myself I was wrong for feeling that way, and in retrospect, this wasn't always the case. Sometimes anger is warranted. Sometimes you need to get angry because you've truly been wronged. What I'm saying is Skyrim is a terrible therapist, but Project Zomboid, on the other hand, did a slightly better job at giving me a life lesson. One of the big aspects of the game is that your survivor is a human with human needs. They need to sleep, eat, and stay hydrated in order to live. Exhaustion and sleepiness will get your survivor killed. Boredom can lead to depression, and depression makes your survivor move slower. It's basically a sign that they've given up. These factors make the game a lot more dangerous than it appears. You may see slow-moving zombies you can outpace and think, this isn't difficult, but just give it a few minutes and you'll soon realize that zombies in this game are a much bigger threat than they first seem. Like death, they're persistent. They might take a while to catch up with you, and if you're not watching your six, you can get taken out by a lone zombie who followed your car from just up the road. Much like life, Zomboid teaches the player lessons every chance it gets, punishing their mistakes in some of the most brutal ways. The zombie horde is persistent. It'll wait until your defenses break down to get you, and every death teaches you another thing to avoid and forces you to find different ways to get things done. This is a game that takes a couple of 100 hours for some people, like myself, to really get good at. And once you start learning how to survive long term, the real life lessons begin to kick in. I use the schizophrenia trait mod in my game because, well, I'm schizoaffective, and if you give me the chance to pick the crazy option in a game, I will. I chose the sensitive archetype for Harry in Disco Elysium, I played it as a Malkavian in Vampire the Masquerade, and overall, I seem to favor mentally ill characters. Forcing a survivor to play through the harsh world of Zomboid as a schizophrenic is cruel, but doing so made me realize how hard life would be for those who suffer from psychosis in an end-of-the-world type scenario. Not having meds and suffering through delusions and hallucinations during a supernatural event sounds fucking miserable, and using this trait mod really drove that point home. Mental illness does best when the sufferer has a support system. Those who suffer alone often do not come out on the other side well. In fact, many of them don't make it. Project Zomboid is already unforgiving and brutal. Adding in a mechanic that causes hallucinations makes it into a horror game. At any given time, you can hallucinate a helicopter event or a fake zombie, both of which make you panic, and seeing a fake zombie causes you to drop your weapon. Not only that, but sometimes your survivor will randomly freak out, causing them to fall over and injure themselves, often a leg injury that causes a movement penalty. This is the definition of playing on hard mode when it isn't necessary. Fake house alarms and various other sounds play throughout your gameplay, causing your survivor to panic quite frequently. Many of these hallucinations can and will get you killed, and imagining myself in a zombie apocalypse while also suffering from symptoms that get worse with stress made me really look at my life and go, I think I'm taking some shit for granted. Winter in Project Zomboid is gorgeous, and often comes with the feeling real snow brings with it. I used to live in a small town in the mountains, and the first time we got heavy snowfall, I remember how enthralled I was when I went outside and experienced the strange silence. No birds, no wind, no breath of the mountains, just this odd silent feeling. Project Zomboid was able to mimic this feeling in-game, something I appreciated. This silence might be strange, but it is gorgeous. Silence helps us think and reflect, and that is what Project Zomboid does when it mirrors this feeling during snowfall. In Project Zomboid, you're not likely to make it to winter. Hell, you probably won't make it through summer into fall, but when you finally get a grasp on things, lock down a base, and secure the essentials, your game slows down. A lot. Constant looting runs are no longer necessary, and at some point, leaving your base will become a choice based on boredom. And it is somewhere between the end of summer and the beginning of winter when existential dread starts to settle. It's been lurking the whole time, a passing feeling here and there, but when the game slows down and you find yourself sawing logs all day, you might start to have thoughts about your existence, what you do in your survivor's shoes, what it might be like to confront death personified, how you'd handle being alone, how long you'd make it before dying to the infection or an accident. You start to think a lot. One night, I couldn't sleep, so I stayed up late playing Project Zomboid. I remember taking my headphones off at one point, and I heard my sleeping boyfriend breathing. At that moment, I really appreciated his presence because I had just been watching my survivor cook food alone in her base before going out to clear the zombies who'd wandered onto her front lawn. Not only did she have to be on constant alert, but there was no human relief in between these intense brushes with death. Nobody to come home to, nobody to share her feelings and fears with, nobody to laugh and giggle with. There was nothing there. She would never hear another live human breathing, just the sound of former humans salivating over the thought of chowing down on her flesh. I realized I needed to appreciate everything I had, because it could very easily be taken from me. I could lose my partner to death. I could lose my house to some disaster. My friends and family could be removed from my life in the blink of an eye. Not to mention my own life could be taken away. Death is always there, and we never know when it will decide to pay us a visit. Looking at my survivors struggle in a world devoid of humanity made me realize how truly lucky I was to have what little I do. Despite my disorder and struggles, I've been able to live an okay life. I have a great partner, a stable living situation. I have access to food and clean water. I have people in my life who love me, and I love them back. Our mortality isn't something we can bargain or reason with. Modern medicine can help us live longer, but it cannot make us immortal. Each of us must face the end, and our legacies can very much immortalize us. Project Zomboid has continuously made me think about what I want to be remembered for. I don't want people to remember me loathing my life. I want to be remembered for being strong and overcoming things. I want to be remembered for appreciating my life. I want to be remembered as a good person. I may have been born with a lifelong malady that makes my game more difficult, but that isn't going to stop me from living my life to the fullest. Some might say, why fight when there is nothing left to fight for? Why keep going when there aren't any survivors left? Because even if it is pointless to do so, you have to keep fighting. Because even when the world feels cold, harsh, unforgiving, and isolating, you have to retain hope. Because why give in to death when you can live despite it?